All right, welcome to the KFO Show, Kayak Fishing Assessed. If you love kayak fishing or fishing in general, guys, you're going to love this show tonight. My name's Darren. I'm your host. You can find me at Wendell Fishing on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all the socials. At Wendell Fishing is where you can find me. Guys, we have the show for you tonight. I got Ethan from FishAnything, and we're going to be talking about multi-species fishing and multi-species kayak fishing. And so I'm absolutely pumped out of my mind. So this is going to be a fantastic show. I am a little tired. I just got done taking my FFA Part 107 drone test today. That was a good time. If any of you guys have to do that for your YouTube channel so you don't get in trouble. But good news, I am an FFA certified drone pilot, passed that test. So I'm pretty excited about that. So I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, usrivermaps.com. If you have not checked them out, for those of you who are on the podcast, you can't see this, but really quick, I'm going to show you some of the work that my buddy Jeff puts on for us. And so I know that a lot of individuals who have been on the show have these hanging up in their offices and their studios. Here's some of the work. There's one from Arkansas. I'm trying to think who that would be. I think it's Jeff Mott. It is. It's Western Sun Vodka right there. I see that. We got Fishing with Gramps, got his up in Indiana. And so these are just, he does some incredible work. If this is something you're ever interested in, go check him out at usrivermaps.com. And I got a code for you. Get $35 off. For those on the podcast, all lowercase, get the $, the number 35 off. And so check him out. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for bringing value to the show. All right, guys. So I have for you Ethan. Let me say, I gotta get this picture off here. This is the issue with like running your own show by yourself. You're trying to do absolutely everything, and I'm getting all my tabs mixed up. All right, so Ethan, FishAnything, owner of Mule Fishing, part of the Kansas State fishing team. I had to like find some random, I don't know, some article from like years ago to find that. So I had to take a deep dive on that. Formerly known as the Online Outdoorsman. I had to take deep. I found that somewhere out there. So, Ethan, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's getting close to my bedtime, but like I was telling you before we went live, I'm gonna try to bring the energy. I'm gonna try to pep it up a little bit. So, yeah, I think you would bring up the fact that I fished in college for Kansas State University. So that's kind of cool that you brought that up.
Well, tell me, if I could ever go back to my college, they didn't have a fishing team after I graduated. Of course, they started one. I'm curious of, just like a sport, you travel together. Just kind of give me. I love hearing people's stories. Just like the shtick, right? I have you on. I want to hear your story, get to personally know you a little bit, and then we'll hop into like tactics and stuff like that. But tell me a little bit about Kansas State. Transition that and kind of like tell the story to here today. YouTube, what comes first? YouTube, Mule Fishing. I'm gonna stop talking. Hit us.
Yeah, sounds good. So I'll try to be semi-quick about all this, but I'm from Kansas originally. I went to college at Kansas State, and I had started getting really into fishing in high school and started trying to do some tournaments and some local club qualifiers and whatnot. And anyways, as I went to college, I had heard that there was a K-State fishing team, so I immediately went and tried to get joined in. And it was just a club sport at Kansas State, and I think that's what you'll find is with like college fishing in general. It's like depending on what college you go to, it can vary significantly in kind of what the program looks like. But for K-State, it was just a club sport, so pretty much anyone could join. However, to compete, you either needed a boat or you needed a friend with a boat to where you would fish together. So it wasn't like anything where like the college provides anything like that. It was kind of all on us. But anyways, I fished there. I had a partner my first couple of years. And so I fished in the back, of his boat, and we would go out and we would do regional club qualifiers in the Kansas area. So some of the reservoirs in Kansas, and we would compete amongst each other.
Okay.
We did fundraise throughout the year. So we had money, and we would use that money to then send, the qualifying teams out to regional events and go compete with other schools. So I was fortunate enough to pretty much compete in collegiate events every single year from freshman all the way. In like my junior and senior year, I actually had my own boat. And so anyways, I competed in places like Georgia, Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa, the list goes on. I traveled a good bit. So South Carolina was my last tournament, but it was really cool. It was cool to be able to go out there and get some trips in and see different parts of the country and fish with other anglers and just learn a lot. You know, I can't say that I was like a great angler at that point, but I certainly got better every year, and it certainly set me up to who I am today. So, anyways, coming out of college, I then got a job just like most folks, and that ended up
Boo.
California, nothing related to fishing. Um, I fished a little bit out there, but I didn't spend a ton of time doing it. But then I moved to Arkansas, and I kind of really picked it back up, started fishing a ton, and that's when I started my YouTube channel. And that was like over 6 years ago, probably.
All right.
So I had some YouTube stuff from way back in the day, but I really kicked off the YouTube again back then in Arkansas, and then really just over time, what I've found is that the less amount of time that I have personally, just because I'm working, the more time that I want to fish like a little bit more simplified approaches. So I've really kind of gravitated towards a lot of ultralight fishing these days and a lot more like light line multi-species fishing.
Okay.
And so now it's like, as much as I love catching bass, I love catching crappie, I love catching bluegill. And I've really gotten really into that over the last several years. So I moved to Michigan, and I've really done a lot of that. Most of the time it's out of a kayak if we've got good weather. So anyways, that was a long-winded answer.
We love long-winded answers. This is what live show is all about. Take us like 3 or 4 or 5 layers deep. You know, we get YouTube, you get the videos. Most people want to, brief to the point. I'll even put you on 2x speed, so I don't have to listen to you that slow. But the live show, we like taking the deep dive. So full permission to go the deep dive. So your YouTube, you started 6 years ago. Just because you like, what was your inspiration for that first video?
So I lie when I say I started 6 years ago. So actually, I started a fishing YouTube channel when I was in high school. So like really, really the stone age of YouTube, like before it was really a thing. So I was watching like some of the other guys that started out really early. Anyways, I would do this. I would make like the most garbage fishing videos, and I did it because I just like, I've always been kind of like, I'm high energy. I have a lot of creativity, or at least I like to think I do. And I wanted something to kind of just, that was my outlet, I guess. It was something that was fun. It was a way of fishing, but then it was a total another layer on top of fishing. It was fishing, but then it was telling a story, and it was trying to like showcase like my experience. You know, after I got through high school, I was going to college, and I guess I probably had some, maybe some self-esteem issues or something, but YouTube wasn't maybe like perceived the same way as it is today. So I got kind of anxious about what other people would think about me. So I like deleted a bunch of my YouTube stuff.
No.
And it wasn't until later, years later, that I kind of had matured enough to know that it's not about necessarily what other people think. It's more about do the things that you like to do and, unapologetically, right? Like just be you. And that's when I kind of got back into it. And it was like really a creative gap in my life, I would say, because I just didn't really have that creative outlet that I wanted. And so I was like, well, I'll pick the camera back up, because I started watching a few fishing videos. Then I'm like, man, I used to do these were really fun. So I started doing it. And in my day job, it's like, I can be creative to an extent, but like not to the same level as this. So that's why I started doing it. I was having a lot of fun with it. The more videos I did, the more fun I had.
Yeah.
And now I'm feeling really good about where I am, just because I feel like I'm really doing the content that I like. And that's really just multi-species fishing, and it's pushing me every day to become a better angler and better understand the different environments which I'm fishing. I see Creek Fishing Adventures is in the chat, and he said my man Ethan is a fish catching machine. So shout out to John. I'm sure you know John, but he's a really good guy, and him and I are very similar in that we just like to catch fish, and it's not always like specific to bass. It's a lot of different species, and I like bringing that to YouTube because I don't think there's a lot of people that necessarily do that. Most people are kind of hardcore into one thing.
Yeah. No, you're right. I love it. And John, I'm coming down to Tennessee in March. We've got to go fishing together. I'm going to reach out to you in a little sidebar. Back to Ethan. Ethan, when did you decide to start mule fishing, and why?
Yeah. So when I was in Arkansas, as when I really got hardcore into ultralight fishing, I started picking up, cheap ultralight, and I was fishing a lot. And I was kind of like, because I'm historically a bass fisherman, I was really looking for like micro versions of the bass type stuff that I was used to. And I was finding that like a lot of the ultralight stuff I found, I didn't really like that much, because your typical ultralight jig was like, it was either kind of a goofy shape, or didn't really have like any features. It might just be like a standard round ball. But then what I found a lot of times was that the jig heads often had like too big of a hook for what I was
Mm,
looking for, because I wanted light line and I wanted to target a lot of panfish and whatnot. And you use too big of a hook, they're never going to get their mouth around it. So they're just going to be nipping at your bait the whole time. You're not going to hook them.
right.
And it's like, I didn't want to fish with worms and a bobber. I didn't want to fish with just a straight shank hook or whatever. I wanted to fish with like a micro jig. So that's when, in November 2019, is when I eventually got around to launching Mule. And it started out with the 1/80th ounce mule jig, the 1/64th, and the 1/32nd. So that was like my micro line of jig heads that I was really excited about. The thought, the idea was in my head for probably a year before it ever came to, at least a year, maybe a year and a half. I don't know, but
Right.
made it happen. And I launched it when I was in Michigan. And then, fast forward. So I've been around for, whatever, however many years that is, 3.5 or whatever it is. And I've been able to expand that into other things. So it's ultralight jigs, but it's ultralight plastics as well. And that was the big thing behind the idea the whole time, was like, I always knew I wanted to do like a high stretch plastic, high durability plastic, because the other thing about panfish and other smaller game fish is, man, they will hit stuff so hard, but they don't always like to eat it. So they will tear up plastics. And I was getting annoyed at
Right.
that. So I wanted an alternative. So I was the first ever really high stretch, high durability, ultralight plastics for the most part. And now I've got a whole line of stuff, and I'm continuing to expand as Mule grows.
Yeah. And two things here. So, three things. First one is, those listening in, this show is never just like, hey, come on and listen to what Darren and whatever his guests have to say. If you have a question, ask it. I will answer it most likely if I see it. So, let us know if you have any questions for Ethan or myself, and we will get around. I star them, and whenever we're kind of in between, kind of talking on points, I'll get those answered for you. So, if you have those, if it kind of helps me out if you like throw question in there, or make it like real large, so I can see it and kind of identify it as a question. So when you say high stretch, I think a lot of people think Elastec. So there we go. What's the difference? Is there a difference between like the ZMan Elastec and kind of your composition?
So I mean, I'm not really in a place to say that, right? But ultimately, I would say that they're very similar material. I'm not gonna. Z-Man, they make Elastec. That is their trademarked term, I
Sure.
guess we'll say. And they make an incredibly great product. This is a very similar material. I'm not going to call it Elastec, but it's basically the same thing. And it's just a high stretch, high durability material. It's easier on the environment than plastisol, and yeah, it
Well,
is
how
what.
so? I'm curious.
Well, it doesn't. So for one, soft plastic, if you throw your Senko out and it flies off your hook, I don't know if you've ever been to a lake, but have you seen what a soft plastic
Oh,
looks like
they
after?
turn white and they grow like 3 or 4 size. Yeah.
They don't really break down, do they? They expand. They release some of the plastic, like the plastisol, which is based on PVC, those chemicals into the environment, and
Mm.
so that kind of just, it's not necessarily something you want in your lakes. It is what it is. I'm not going to go all environmentalist on you or anything, but it's something that is more harmful to the environment. Whereas this is not going to do that. It is a plastic that doesn't have those same chemicals in it, so it's just a little bit easier on the environment. But yeah, so anyways, it's very similar to some of the others. I mean, there's Nico out there, there's Z-Man out there, but it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I had the Burley fishing guys on, and they actually are the ones that got me hooked up with you. And they were talking about how they have some of the, I think it was the donkey tail that they're repping. And they're like, I bought them like a year ago, and they don't ever break down or ever get chewed apart. Like we haven't had to buy them since. So these things will hold up. That is for sure. All right, we got some questions over here. Let me see. Losing big fish. Ethan, when are you dropping your new product? Is there something that I missed out here? Are you like showcasing new product but not talking about it yet?
Oh no, so I was on a Burley or sorry, the aggressively average
Oh,
anglers.
sorry, you're right. I messed up too. Triple A.
It's very hard to let go of that name. I was on their recent show, and I showed the new Bronco blade, which is like the jig spinner that I released. But we kind of hinted at the end that there's going to be more stuff coming this spring. So I don't have a specific date for you, LBF. I'm thinking, hopefully sometime earlier spring. But yeah, I've got another product in the works, and I think it's going to be one that a lot of people here hopefully enjoy. I know I'm going to enjoy it. So, that's typically how I make my products. It's like, I'd love to tell you that I'm just like some big scientist and I'm doing all this research and I'm like, looking at trends. And it's like, no, I'm looking at the market, looking at what currently is being served, looking at what I like to fish and what I want, and I'm really trying to cater to that. And sure, I take outside perspective and outside opinions very seriously too. So a lot of people will send me their opinions for what they think is needed, and I always take that seriously. So if you ever have ideas, I'm happy to look at those. But all in all, I'm basically just trying to cater to what I'm looking for as an angler, and I just know there's a lot of like-minded people like me, which is wonderful because that allows Mule to continue to grow.
Yeah, for sure. I think I remember reading somewhere Mule. Where'd that name come from?
So my grandpa and my grandma always loved mules growing up, and they always had mules. And so this silhouette, that's a picture of my grandpa, and he's still alive. He's lives down in Kansas, and I just wanted to kind of pay tribute to my family and just kind
Mhm.
of always remember anytime I'm interacting with the business, kind of what's most important. The other thing is, a mule is kind of like notorious for being a hardworking animal.
Oh yeah.
And when it comes to like mule fishing, it's like my whole goal is a light line multi-species system. It's not about being fancy. It's not about being the most cutting edge bass technology or big swim baits or that sort of thing. It's not specialty. It's more widespread, more hardworking. No matter where you go, you're going to be able to catch fish with these products. That's kind of why I created it. I wanted it to be a little bit more simplified system. And I think one of the things that I kept thinking about every time when I was thinking about just the fishing industry in general was, if I walk into a Bass Pro Shops and I am brand new to angling, you're either going to go in there and you're going to be really confused. You're going to go in there and say, well, I guess I'll just go get hooks, bobber, and weights because that's kind of like what I assume I need, but you
Right.
still don't even know what size hooks. Um, or you're going to go in there and you're going to have an associate talk to you and they're going to push you towards whatever they like to fish or whatever. And it may not be right for you. So for me, I was just like, let's try to bring information to the internet. Let's try to bring gear to the internet that caters to a simplified approach to fishing. And the nice thing is for people that are like super hardcore into ultralight, it's good for them too. So it's like whether you are like an advanced ultralight guy or just a simplified, like more, amateur fisherman that just wants to fish a little bit, there's kind of a spot for you with Mule. And that was kind of the goal. So
Yeah. I was talking with Ethan before the show, and I said, "Hey, if the listeners want to take the show over, we'll let them." And I got a bunch of questions, so I'm going to stop with all my questions here and come back to here. We got John from Creek Fishing asking the question: when do the pumpkin seed get active?
I mean, I'd say that anytime I'd say like May 1st we'll be out there and we should be able to catch plenty of pumpkin seed. Um, there should be on beds, I would say tail end of May, kind of that early part of summer. And that's when you can really catch, some of those big ones and a lot of consistency. So I'd say that's probably the time frame I would look at. That being said, I mean, you can catch them all year round. I mean,
Sure.
if there would have ever been ice this year, I could have caught pumpkin seeds through the ice, but I just never really got consistent ice up here. So they're active all year round to an extent, but I'd say the best fishing is like late May into June would be like the prime spawning time frame.
Okay. And I'll follow up with a question: if you're going after pumpkin seed, which one of your lures would you use to go after them?
Pumpkin seed, I guess if I feel like for big ones, I would just do a donkey tail junior on a like a 1/32 ounce mule jig. That's kind of like my confidence rig just for versatility, but just specifically big panfish. Um, if I'm just going for numbers and I just want to catch a lot of sunfish, I'm going to go with a mule minnow 1.2 on like a 1/64 ounce mule jig. Super slow rate of fall, tiny, tiny profile. They get their mouth around it super easy. Um, and you just catch a ton of fish on it. And that was actually exactly what I used when John and I were catching pumpkin seed up here in Michigan. He came out and we fished last
All
summer,
right.
and that was the rig I was using because that's my kind of my go-to like just summer sunfish lure. That little mule minnow 1.2.
All right. We'll circle back and take a deep dive on kind of what's on his website. I got a picture up here. I'll let him kind of walk us through it. I got a question from Bucktail Fishing. And I'm going to follow up with this question. He's asked the question, any preferred ultralight rigs? I can't say I've ever paid much attention to it, but it sounds like a fun endeavor. And I'll follow that up with this year will be the first year I carry 6 rods on the back of my fishing kayak. And one of them is going to be an ultralight rig.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it has to do with kind of watching your videos, has to do with listening to AAA and kind of their love for ultralight fishing. And then creek fishing, and I had him on the show a while back, and I was watching his videos. Like, this sounds like when the bass aren't hitting typically.
It's a skunk saver, man.
Yeah, man. You could go out there and you just at least get some fish in the boat. And it sounds, and if it doesn't always have to be big bass, big bass, big bass, and you just love catching fish regardless of size, I want to have an ultralight rig. And so,
yeah,
for those of us who are like, this is my first ultralight rig, I'm depending solely on you to tell me what to get. What would you say?
So when I read this question, I was thinking like rig as in like what rigs to throw, like what to tie on your lures.
Oh,
line. But I'll answer both real quick.
okay.
From an ultralight rod reel combo standpoint, I would look for something around the 6 foot range. It's the most versatile from everything I've done. I do a lot of bank fishing, creek fishing, kayak fishing. The 6 foot is kind of what I call the 7 foot of bass fishing. Like, I think a lot of people, like, if they had one rod for bass fishing, a lot of times they say 7 foot. For me, with ultralight, I'm going 6 foot. I want a fast action. You just get a fast action. Don't do anything less than a fast. It's just better for everything. It works extremely well with jigs. And I find with ultralights, if they say it's moderate fast, then it is a noodle. You don't want a noodle. So 6 foot fast action ultralight power. And then I would go with a size 1000 spinning reel. So whatever your poison is, right? Like, I'm not gonna tell you the best rod or the best reels. Like, if you like Lose, go Lose. If you like Okuma, go Okuma. For me, I like Daiwa and Shimano. I just have a lot of success with them. They've lasted long for me. They've got good drag systems. So I either Daiwa or Shimano. And then I would say I kind of like, I've got 2 approaches with line. I could either go with a copolymer or it's kind of like a monofilament, like a coated monofilament, but something like a Trilene Sensation, a copolymer. I like the 2 pound though. It's a much lower diameter and you can cast it significantly farther with tiny baits. 4 pound is fine too. You're just going to get less casting distance on like the smaller presentations. But if you like braid, which I love braid, I would go with a 6 pound high quality braid with like a 4 pound mono leader. And you're going to get the same casting distance with that as you would a 2 pound mono because of that low diameter line. Yeah. Once it gets a little wet, you should sing it out there. The 2 brands that I am pretty high and mighty on is the Daiwa J Braid Grand X8 in the 6 pound test is great. And then the one that I actually like even better, but it's very expensive, is the Spro Finesse Braid. Really good, just a really good braid. Anyways, yeah, as far as rods and reel go, like with brands, I mean, like there's lots of good options out there. You can watch my videos if you really want to hone in on anything specific, but it kind of just depends on your price range. So I'm not going to tell you an exact model.
Well, you just laid a truth nugget for us. That was a lot of information there. And no, it's great. I love information. We can always go back to the replay if we really want to dissect what you wanted to say. But man, the questions are coming in like crazy. So I'm going to keep on rolling through them. What's this one say? All right. So we're going back a little bit earlier. Are your jigs modified? This comes from pull my finger. He asks questions and it always makes me laugh every time I read it. Are your jig heads modified to provide durability?
I mean, I don't think that they would be modified to provide durability necessarily. I think that jig heads in general just have a wide spectrum of quality, right? And it kind of depends on how much you're willing to pay. Something like the Workhorse jig costs more than the Mule jig. That's a tungsten resin material. That's a significantly higher cost, material to acquire and to produce. And so that's something where it's like, if you want that tungsten, you got to be willing to pay for it. If you want the bare bones, you go with something bare bones. But I feel like it's such a spectrum, it's hard to say. But I would say, like, when it came to the design of them, I wanted something that was going to hold up and something that was going to be designed for the light line usage. You can't put a big thick gauge hook on a little tiny jig and throw it on 2 pound test. The Workhorse jig has a little bit thicker gauge hook. It's probably a little bit better suited for braid. Whereas the Mule jigs is a much more simple light wire hook. And I found that is exactly what I need. it has caught so many fish and big fish, and it's because it's meant to pair up properly with light tackle. So people that throw like a little 1/32 ounce mule jig, you probably shouldn't be throwing that on a medium rod. That should be thrown on a light or an ultralight, and in some cases a medium light, but I wouldn't really go above that. And you should be using it with lighter pound test. So that was what it was designed for. As far as the head goes and like the quality of it, I'd say that they do a pretty good job of keeping their paint on them. They are at the end of the day a jig head, so if you fish them around a lot of heavy cover, you're gonna chip some paint, and that's kind of the nature of the beast. But I don't find that you can get around that too much, but I could be mistaken. And then the other thing is I've worked extremely hard on like the integrity of the head. So when I say that, I mean the first time when I started mule jigs, that first product, the head would start to wobble after a little while. That was unacceptable, and that was not something that I wanted in my product. So as I move forward, I've really pushed for continued quality increases, and I can tell you that the jigs today, it is very hard to ever make a jig lose its function. Its function. It's like you're going to have to catch 100 fish on it to potentially do that. I fish the same jigs so long, so I would say the quality is as good as you're going to find from the price point standpoint. So
I'll lose them way before I abuse them, right? Sounds
usually,
me, yeah.
Or you'll just dole a hook. Like if you catch enough fish or hook it on a rock or do stuff like that, eventually you'll just dole a hook and you'll just wear a jig out. So I've got a few of those kind of hanging out.
Oh yeah, me too. I just dole them. So many fish catching. You
got to retire.
So many.
At the end of the day, these are $4.29 for a 5-pack as it stands today, and I'm pretty proud of that price point.
You should be. Holy cow!
Well, it used to be. I started it at like $3.99, but just like with all the inflation crap, it's just like it's just been impossible to try to keep things where you want it. But I'm still really proud of the price because for less than $1 per jig, that's for a specialized jig. I feel really good about that.
And you should. So I mean, there's a lot more questions over here. I want to pull back to one business question when it comes to mule. What has been the hardest thing, let's say in the last 12 months? The kind of left field. You're like, oh, that's tough.
I think the hardest thing is, just trying to wear so many hats can be really hard because I have a full-time job and I have a family, and like it can be really hard to manage my time and just like when I get an email from someone, then I do everything. I handle the emails. I handle like all of the, like all the product development, all of the innovation, all that. But I would say just like keeping on top of everything is one of the harder things, but I like work. I like being busy. So I'm not going to complain about that. The only other thing that I would say like that jumps out to me is just like inventory management. Like it's really hard to always know exactly when to plan that next order. So I've definitely been out of stock on some things before, and it's not because I am ignorant to it. It's just it's hard sometimes to plan exactly how much I'm going to need on a business that's growing, and I'm very, very thankful that it's growing. It's just one of those things where it's like you don't know how to necessarily plan for it.
Yeah.
So
well,
I'm working on it, and cash flow certainly helps. The thing about mule, I don't take a paycheck from mule. Every single dollar of mule, it goes back into the company. The other thing it does is, I do have like a waterway cleanup initiative where I do kick back to waterway cleanup initiative. So American Rivers is a nonprofit, Living Lands and Waters is a nonprofit. I've contributed financially to those. I've also contributed to causes and to local cleanups and that sort of thing. So I'm going to continue to do that. But I've never taken a paycheck from mule and don't really intend to. I'm just going to continue to try to grow it into a system that we can all catch fish on. And so every time people have supported, it's allowed me to kind of give a little bit more flexibility. And, from a business standpoint, for those of you that have a business or everything,
they think you're crazy.
Well, you might know that inventory is very expensive to hold.
Sure.
So like it's hard to know how much you need, and you don't want to, if you have too much, that costs you money. You're taking cash and you're putting it into a product, and then that product has to stay somewhere. So there's a lot of complexities. I've learned a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you're going to need to order some more donkey tails because I'm going to be ordering some of those right after the show. Got a question here from Scott Hanneman. Are the mule plastics impregnated with scents?
No, I decided specifically that I don't want to put scent in them from the start. And the reason is, I don't know if you've used other scented, stretchy plastics, but it kind of gives them that, like, they get so like gross. And I don't I don't like that, because I don't want you to, if you buy a pack of plastics and then you end up leaving it sit for a long time, I don't want it to be like gross and icky and just not like the material you want. So I'd rather have a more bare bones. The other thing is just I want to keep the buoyancy perfect, and I want to just make sure that it has that action that I look for. That being said, you can add scent easily, and they hold a scent really well. So one of my favorite
Okay.
brands is Procure. My buddy Ramon Outdoors, he turned me on to Procure, and it's like $4 or $5 for a bottle, and it'll last you years. I mean, squeeze a little bit of, actually I'll get some like this. Boom. You squeeze a little bit of that
Okay.
like on just like one of my Mule plastics, and just kind of rub it on there. It'll last, I mean, the bulk of the day fishing, just a little squeeze. And it does seem to make an impact. So I'm a believer in scent, but I preferred to keep my plastics scent free from the start, just because I felt like 90% of the time you don't really need scent. It's those 10% of the time that you do, and you can easily add it.
Well, let's take a little deeper dive there. When would you say is the 10% that you do need it
Less than
versus
50
you
degree
don't?
water.
Less than 15-degree water.
Less than 50, yeah.
50. So it's cold
Cold
outside.
water.
Put some scent on there.
Say again.
So it's cold out. Put some scent.
I just find that in my experience, it feels like fish rely very little on their sense of smell, except for probably like, like catfish and other fish that actually are using their smell a lot. But like bass, panfish, I find that sense of smell is probably like one of the lowest ranking senses. Like it's their lateral line, it's their eyesight, and then it's just like their reaction. But in colder water temperatures, they typically are slower moving. You're typically slowing down your presentation. They have a lot more time to think about that. So by appealing to that next sense, I find that you do tend to catch a few more fish. But to me, it's like if I went out there in 70-degree water and the fish are active, and I'm throwing a non-scented bait, someone's throwing a scented bait, I don't think you're going to notice any difference.
Got
It's
it.
just my perspective.
No, I mean that's sweet. I never really even thought about it. I don't know if I have personally been a believer of scents, probably for the reason that I've used it, not used it, and hasn't seen any noticeable difference. But I'm also not typically multi-species fishing in sub 50-degree water all the time either. So I was out this morning and it was cold and raining and super windy. Didn't catch a flipping thing, but got my bona fide P127 out in the water for the first time. And so
Should
that
have
was
used
pretty
scent.
exciting. I should have. Should have. I gotta look up Ramon. Showed me the business, so that'll be good. All right, we got questions coming in like left and right here. All right, let me see here. Let's do, and you kind of answered this one already, but it was in the midst of a ton of other questions. I mean, ton of other answers you were providing everybody. And so this comes from SF Outdoors in Arkansas, AR. Ethan, big fan, been watching your channel for the past few years. Isn't that fun to hear?
Yeah,
This is fun. This is kind of fun to hear. I mean, no one could even say that to me because I haven't been on for a few years. But what's your go-to line for your baits? And I know you said it, but say it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So first off, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the support. Thank you for watching. It does mean a lot, and I love making videos. And so when people spend time out of their day to watch them, that it means a lot to me. Secondly, as far as line goes, I mean, it kind of depends on what I'm doing. But for ultralight fishing specifically, or light line fishing, I like braid a lot. My top brand choice would either be the Sunline, or sorry, the Spro Finesse Braid is a really good one. It's a little pricey, so if you don't want to spend quite that much, the Daiwa J Braid Grand X8 is another great alternative. And then sometimes when you want to use more of like a monofilament or a little bit more basic line, to me, like the Trilene Sensation, it's like $9 for a spool of 330 yards. It's a killer product for what it is, and I'm kind of scared they're going to discontinue it. So if you see it, I would buy some.
Stockpile it up. Yeah, the beauty of ultralight fishing is not as expensive as like typical bass fishing. A lot of things, line, baits, jigs, all that stuff's a little cheaper. At least what I see.
You don't have to spend a lot of money to catch fish on ultralight.
Yeah, I love it. All right, got one from Stephen M. Hey Ethan, here's my large question for you. Is your product line in any shops? Is that a goal of yours? Are you only online?
Yeah, Stephen, that's a great question, and I appreciate it. So it is definitely a goal. If I'm being honest with you, with a full-time job and a family coming before this as a priority, I don't have the time to necessarily go out there and like call on bait shops and that sort of thing. And I don't really hear from them very often. So I'd say there are a few small bait shops here and there that I've been able to work with, but nothing really at a large scale. So it's basically all online. That being said, there's been a couple online retailers that have actually worked with me. So Discount Tackle, it's a company that
Oh yeah.
I do some stuff with from an ambassador standpoint. They're a great company and they've carry all my products. So so if you can buy like your mule jigs and stuff there, but you could also buy line and rods and reels, and they're incredible, great retailer online. And then Bait Finesse Empire, that's like it's specialty shop for bait finesse gear. So people that do BFS fishing, they have the mule lineup too. So definitely something I want to look into, Steven, and hopefully someday I can find the right relationships to help me get into more bait shops. Because I'll just tell you like a long-term goal of mine, and I like to talk about this because it's like from a content standpoint, this is like a dream.
Yeah.
I would like to do some like travel type video content where I go to a small bait shop. Let's say there's a small bait shop in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I drive down there and I showcase their bait shop, get them set up with mule gear so they buy some mule gear. I then fish in that area and use the gear from their shop to kind of like catch fish in their local neck of the woods. And then it's kind of like it's showcasing their stuff. It's benefiting Mule because they're now a customer. But at the same time, I'm also helping people understand how to use the products and how to go out there and catch fish for themselves. So that's that's something I've thought about a lot. If I
Yeah.
ever get the time to do it, I'd like to do that. And I could showcase, like 10 different retailers across the area and then eventually expand out. Like I don't know, probably a pipe dream for now, but something I want to do.
I mean, it sounds like you're on your way. I'm actually a little bit surprised that you weren't full time or on your way or close to it with the company and your YouTube channel. And I mean, I've just heard nothing but great things from a lot of the people that I've talked to. Um,
Yeah,
what's going on? Is there a future for you? Like, full? Is that even a goal of yours, or do you like your day
I love
job?
my
What
job.
is your day job?
I'm in sales for a food company.
Okay,
Yeah, I like to maintain a little bit of a little bit of a personal
privacy line. That's fine.
privacy line, right?
Yeah,
So
go for it. You
I'm
don't
in
have to
sales
talk
for a
about it.
food company. It's a great job. It's a job I very much enjoy. I love my coworkers. I love my company, and it also has extremely great benefits that allows me to have the flexibility to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And it also allows me to provide for my family and with benefits and with health insurance and that sort of thing. And it's like, I don't know that necessarily like as much as I think it's kind of like I think that we as a society like to idolize like we like to say like, oh, like they're self-employed and they're doing all these things, or like they're an influencer and it's like, oh, they're amazing, they've made it. It's like I don't know that we necessarily need to say that's making it. I'm very, very happy. Like I love doing this. I love being busy 70 hours a week. I love doing all these things. I love the fact that I get to spend so much time with my family and also get to do this. And so like, I don't know, like I don't want to think too far long term. I want to just kind of enjoy what I'm doing, work hard at work, work hard on this, be a good dad, be a good husband, live my life. So
yeah. Sometimes, and I can get caught up in it. You're always thinking about the future that you forget about living the life you're currently in because you're always looking for the next. I want to be here, and you never actually live where you're at. And
I
so,
think, yeah, I think becoming a dad has slowed me down a little bit. I used to do that. I was always thinking about the future and always like what I want and like who I want to be and what I want to be doing. And it's like, but now it's like the simple things in life. It's like, dude, like just reading a book to my son at night and just like seeing his eyes light up when we watch like a show that has animals on it. Like, dude, like that's it. That's what the money's for, is for him. Like, so I'm probably on a high right now because he's so young, and maybe I'll start thinking longer term again someday. But for now, it's like I kind of have my focus, and that's not, this is a focus, but it's not the focus, So
yeah, no, for sure. I'm gonna hop over to the comments again. Morgan says, "I recently ordered my first kayak. Awesome! Welcome to the dark side, Morgan. While waiting for the kayak to be delivered, I decided to watch YouTube videos to get a thorough information soak. That's how I found both you cats. Well, Morgan, appreciate it that you found us. Thanks for letting us know. I actually remember Morgan. He makes comments from time to time in the live show. So, man, appreciate you so much. You have to follow up here. I always carry a Temple Fork Outfitters trout panfish 5.6 with the Daiwa Revros. I have no clue what you're talking about, but Ethan puts his thumbs up like he knows what you're talking about. So, I mean, you must like that rig. Well, you like Daiwa, right?
I like both of those things.
Yeah.
Temple Fork makes a fantastic, fantastic ultralight rod. It's probably like, if you got $100 to spend, that would probably be like that's like your do it all. I like the 6 foot, but the 5'6" is great too. I had a 5'6". I just sent it to my friend Travis. He's in the comments somewhere. And he sent me a West Virginia shirt. So
okay, I saw him make a note of that earlier. Yeah, comment on it.
I love it. I mean, I've never actually adventured in West Virginia, but it's something it's on my list because I want to go visit Travis and go fishing with him. Anyways, great rod, great reel, good choice.
Travis, where you at? I was just down in Parkersburg. I'm down there all the time. I know West Virginia is huge, and you're probably not in like the north side of it, but hit me up in the comments. I'm curious because I'm down there often. All right, Lost in Tackle. What was the budget combo you spoke about the other night? Banana.
I think that's a crescent moon, but
is this a crescent moon?
I don't think that's a banana, although it probably does.
You're right. It is a moon, not a banana.
It's similar. So I guess it just depends. Like when we say budget, I talk about ultralights a lot. So there's a few things that stand out to me. I'd say like for $50, my best like ultralight rod, I'd go with a 13 Fishing Defy Silver. It's just awesome rod for $50. If you want to spend less than $50, I think you're kind of limited because there's just only a handful out there. Akuma Celilo is a good one, but I would not recommend getting a longer version of it because it's very whippy. Their 5'6" model would be a good one. Shakespeare Micro Series is also good for the price. It's like $20 at Walmart. But again, just like the Okuma, don't go with a long rod because they get very whippy, very noodly, and they're just not as good for some of these applications. And then as far as reels go, like the lowest or like the highest price that you can afford for Daiwa and Shimano is what I always say. Size 1000. Daiwa Revros for $45 is incredibly good reel. It's lasted me a long time. I finally did break off I was fishing it, and the reverse, what do you call it? The reverse reeling, back reeling. There's a switch that you can go to back reeling. Well, that's snapped off. And I never back reel, but anyways, it had it set to back reel. So I had to grab pliers and just flip that back, and it still works totally fine. It just doesn't have the switch now, and I don't need it, so I'm fine. But all in all, otherwise, I've never had issues with it. And that reel's getting pretty old and seen a lot of stuff. So great reel for $45.
Yeah. So I was gonna. Oh yeah. How many ultralight reels are in your possession right now?
Not a good thing to answer.
Get your own room.
I'm going to start by saying you absolutely do not need this much. I do this because I like to test the gear. I like to help bring content to the internet so that way I can steer you into the proper choice from the start, as opposed to buying so much stuff that you don't need it. More fishing gear doesn't make you happier. I like to simplify. I've got probably like 10 ultralight reels I need for the amount I fish and like the type of fishing I do. I'd say like 3 would be fine.
Yeah.
But it's more a matter of constantly testing gear, constantly switching stuff out, and eventually I will downsize. I just don't need as much as I have, but I've got a lot.
Yeah, right on. Man, like I said, if you're listening in, I will let you take the show with your questions. So I'm going to forego all of my questions that I spent hours on today composing and head back over here. Lost in Tackle's got one for you. What's the best environmental coating? Is there one for jigs, lures, etc.?
I'm not sure I follow. I don't know when you say environmental coating. Maybe I don't know, Wendell. Why don't you have anything off the top?
I mean, I'm guessing if you lose one, I mean, is it detrimental or is it basically like?
Oh, so
and maybe we can circle back to this. Lost in Tackle, I need you to go into the comments and qualify a little bit for us. Let's expand, talk a little bit more on that, and we'll circle back on that. So we're going to go back to losing big fish. He says, caught a 7-pound.
Probably carp.
Carp or gar. on a
Well,
probably
maybe
karma.
more.
Yeah, on a 132nd sound mule jig with a donkey tail junior and karma. Then bend it all.
Hey,
Bend it
LBF,
all.
buddy, you had a couple typos, but that's okay. You caught a big fish, my friend. And
That's awesome.
no, man, I appreciate your support. He's in the comments of pretty much all my videos. Definitely, I'm going back and forth with him all the time. So I love to hear it. I just love, like, whether it was a gar or a carp, it doesn't matter. Either one of those, they're incredibly fun fish. They're a cool fish that don't get quite as much love. And like, dude, you hook into one of those, just straight fun. I caught a handful of carp on my stuff as well. Like, it's like, oh, I'm kind of just fishing for panfish. All of a sudden, ooh,
Boom.
like, how can you not like that? You know, yeah, you land them. They're a little slimy. They're a little funny looking, but at the end of the day, dude, they are fun to catch.
Especially on 2 to 4 pound line.
Oh yeah.
Gosh, that'd be amazing. All right, moving on. Scott, I'm not sure if he answered this one, but he asked it, and I'll at least throw it up. Would you be willing to name a favorite lake in Michigan?
I honestly, like, I like to keep like a little bit of like a personal
Yeah.
space with like
No,
social
I hear
media.
you.
So I I don't really have one. The other thing, I guess what I'll say too is like I like to explore a lot. So one of the beautiful things about Michigan is we have over 10,000 lakes and so many smaller lakes that are just so conducive to kayak fishing. This show's all about kayak fishing. We are in an area where it's like there's a lot of good kayak fishing water. So I'm always trying to try new areas. So again, yeah, just kind of like social media is kind of weird. Like if you put your life on the internet, it's like you have to be semi like I don't know. It's just a comfort thing for me.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, if you're a content creator, you want to have some semblance, something that's private. I know for me, I get that question a lot. Oh, where do you fish? And I always tell them, I'll share everything with you except my fishing spots.
Well, and I don't mind talking about it a little bit more and like a little bit more intimate thing too. Like if you DM me on Instagram, like I'll happily like talk to you about Michigan fishing. I'll talk about spots. It's more a matter of like publishing stuff like to the widespread internet when you don't really know who's like watching or listening.
No,
It's
makes
just
sense.
you have to be smart.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let me see. RGM, welcome. Sorry, I was on another stream. What?
He dropped that other stream for you, so
What? Or Chad
wait,
Hoover's stream was it ended a little late, and he decided to come over. One of the two. Let me see. Ewan Zavoda. What does he say over here? Let's see. I didn't read this. I'm just gonna throw it up there and take a risk. Seems like kayak for fishing are less like kayaks, more like expensive John boats. I'd like to see the tourneys with no live scoping or trolling motors. Got a Blocket fan over here. What do you think about so much of the technical stuff? This is kind of personal preference. I mean, first talk about what is it? I'm gonna let this open up a bit. So, is kayak fishing obsessed? Tell us about your kayak, and then answer this question on the kind of sidebar.
I'm typically a pretty like try to keep a relatively simplified approach. You know, I think I've owned like at least 9 kayaks in my life.
Oh wow,
So I'm constantly kind of like getting them, selling them, that sort of thing. But I've been in the Old Town Sportsman PDL 120 for the last couple of years. I was fortunate enough that Old Town sent me one to make with videos and stuff, and so I've just kind of been in it ever since. But I've fished out of natives too. They were great kayaks. Um, all in all, I'd say like for me, I have a fish finder, like really basic, one of the cheapest fish finders I could get. It's a Lowrance Hook 2 5X. Just
oh
like
yeah,
I wanted ice fishing capabilities and kayak fishing capabilities, and that was basically. And I wanted one that I could get a graph on it, like a chart to where I could see the lake and the outlines and the contours. And that was to get those capabilities. That was the cheapest I could find out. It was around $300, not bad.
Hmm.
Anyways, I have that. I don't ever feel a need to have a trolling motor. I like exercise. I like staying active, and I feel like kayak fishing, part of the draw for me is like getting exercise and being active and having a good physical outlet where you can go and you can put in a hard day's work while catching fish, and then you get done and you're like, wow, like I feel good, like I feel like I did something. So that's part of the draw for me. So while I have no problem with people with trolling motors, that's just not my personal preference. And then with electronics, I just don't think I would ever get a use out of $3,000 electronics on a kayak. I'm not covering near enough water to fully utilize that technology. I do think it would be awesome to use for like crappie fishing,
right.
and like in the right situations, you could really make some stuff happen. But I feel like for the amount of money you pay for that, you need to be on the water a ton to justify it. And for me, these days, as much as I'd love to tell you I'm on the water every day, I'm not. I'm usually throughout the nice season, out there once a week, hopefully at least. And 4-hour trips, 3-hour trips. It's like, I just don't think I would justify the technology. So that's me. But as far as competing goes, totally different answer. I mean, I think it is what it is. I think it's kind of up to the tournament, you know, series to regulate what they see fit. Ultimately, it is a little annoying because it gets to the point where some of the people that have the greatest technology may be positioned a little bit better, a little bit more favorably. And they've got a $7,000 kayak, whereas people are trying to compete in $500 kayaks. But I say that, and like, dude, money doesn't make the angler, and the
Yeah.
technology doesn't make the angler. Like, you can go out and beat those guys kayak fishing in a $500 kayak with nothing on it at like 9 times out of 10 if you've got the skills. The skills are way more important than the technology. I'll just
Yep.
say that.
Yeah. I'm there with you. It's finally nice to find someone who I was talking to Chad Hoover recently, and I was talking about getting a bona fide P127, and I was getting his thoughts on it. And he asked me a question like, "Why do you want to pedal over a trolling?" And I was like, "Be completely honest with you, I need the exercise." This morning, it was the first time I took my kayak out in months because it's been so cold in Northeast Ohio, or ice on the water, and I was wheezing. So I was pedaling it this morning. I was like, "Oh man, I need a good season of getting some exercise." And I get it. He's down there in Gunnersville. That lake is massive, right?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, it's
fishing like
totally different.
500,000 acre lakes that I can get around in a pedal drive. And so it kind of to each his own and what you're looking for, but it makes sense
If
to
I was
me.
fishing Gunnersville, I'd have a boat.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. True.
I mean, I love kayak fishing, but to me, it's like I feel like kayak fishing is kind of at its best in a little bit smaller bodies of water and rivers. I,
Yeah.
I I find like, I don't know, you're out on a giant like man-made river system lake, and you're just putzing around in your kayak. I guess I'd just be like, well, you just spent 10 grand on that. Like, just get a small boat and
And
throw a little outboard on it and get out there. But
there you go. There you go. Diggs says that's what I'm looking for right now in reference to what you're talking about, your Old Town 120 PDL. Any thoughts on that? Like, yes, no, things you like about it, things you don't necessarily love, or wish it would change it up a little bit.
yeah, when it comes to recommendations for kayaks, I always, anytime someone asks me, hey, I've got X amount of dollars, what should I do? I always ask them, rate the following factors, and then we'll make a decision off that. Speed, stability, storage, transportability, and then I think I usually do size. I want to say I can't remember. There was a fifth one. I might not. Maybe the fifth one was just price. Like, so what is your most important? So you rate those. If you say, when I say transportability, I'm talking about like how easy is it to transport.
Sure.
And if transportability is your first metric, right? Like, and the ability to like not only store it, but also get it on your car and get it out there. The Old Town's not going to be the one you want, right? Because it's so heavy and it's big. So you're going to want something lighter, more easy to manage. And so for me, like, I would rate transportability as like my top factor. If I'm someone that's getting out there for 2-hour trips and I maybe have a little less space and maybe I need to car top it every single time,
Sure.
I want something like that. I want something a little bit throw and go, right? But if I'm, hey, I got to pick up, I got plenty of space, transportability, I'm not that worried about it. For me, what's important is stability. Oh, for me, what's important is, storage solutions. Yeah, Old Town, yeah, that's going to be a great kayak. You can throw that in the back of your pickup. You're great. So I don't know. I love the Old Town. I think it's an incredibly good kayak. It's built for a serious fishing trip. It's heavy. It's got a lot of space. It's a large vessel. So I would say it's kind of made for bigger fishing trips and for comfort on the water. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a little bit more clunky to get around.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's fast on the water. I mean, I had the native Manta Ray PD, or the native Manta Ray 12 with the drive system, which they
Yeah.
don't make anymore. That was like 62 pounds. So I could transport that
Oh,
so easy. It was light
yeah.
and it was fast. But honestly, the Old Town and that, like, relatively similar speed. I don't find that a drive system, as long as it's got a good drive system, Like, it doesn't matter the weight of the kayak that much. You're still going to be going about the same speed.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, we have, can you believe 55 minutes have passed by already? That's crazy.
It's fun how when you talk about stuff you're passionate about, like,
Oh,
it feels like 2 minutes.
yeah. Well, what I wanted to do is I have some photos here of basically your website. And I just want you to walk us through. I mean, you have a relatively, and it makes sense after talking to you, right? You like a relatively simple, you like simplification, it almost seems like. And when you look at the line that you have on Mule Fishing, it's all fairly simple. So I'm going to throw this up here and just real quick run through it, what you would use it for, why you created it. And I'm going to kind of just going back and forth. Now, just keep in mind, we got people on the podcast. And so you might have to like be a little more descriptive than you typically would, because not everyone's going to be able to see this photo. So, all right. So this is your product line. Well, I mean, I cut off your Bronco blade and a couple of your floats, but for the most part, this is your product line. So walk us through it.
All right. So you'll notice when you look at this, there are 2 types of jigs, numerous sizes, but you've got a workhorse jig and you've got a mule jig. As I mentioned earlier, the mule jig was the very original design for mule fishing. It was the first thing I ever launched. And I launched it because I felt that we needed a high quality light line multi-species jig offering. So as you can see, it's a kind of like the mushroom style head. So similar to a Ned rig, except micro. It's got a high quality bait keeper on it. And then it's got a light wire hook, a small hook. So the number, the 1/80th ounce jig features a number 10. And then the 1/64th goes to a number 8, 1/32nd, number 6, and then you got a number 4 on both of the 1/16th and 3/32nd. These are really designed to pair with, microplastics, small plastics, and just fish light line for numerous species. And then that's when I kind of filtered into the Donkey Tail Junior and the Donkey Tail. Those were my first 2 plastic launches. Reason I went with like a small swim bait design is because I felt like it was truly one of the most versatile things. You could fish it like a Ned rig, you can swim it, you can twitch it, you can do a lot of things, and it appeals to a wide variety of fish species because ultimately most fish species either eat insect larvae or they eat minnows or small bait fish. And so I felt like a small bait fish profile would be a good way to start. And the Donkey Tail Junior, I would say, is what I would pair with like the 1/64th, 1/80th, and the 1/32nd, whereas the Donkey Tail I would pair with the 1/16th and 3/32nd. Your Donkey Tail Junior is going to be a little bit more for like the smaller game fish. You can catch just about anything on it, I want to be clear, but it's going to be a big panfish type bait, whereas the Donkey Tail is going to be either magnum crappie or it's going to be bass, trout, walleye, that sort of thing.
Nice.
And then after that, I launched the horsefly, and that's exactly because I just mentioned a second ago, like insect larvae was the other key forage for a lot of species of fish. So whether you're talking trout or panfish or just a lot of species, quite honestly, like, catch a lot of bass on these too, catch carp every now and again on them. A lot of fish feed on insect larvae, and more so, I think, than a lot of anglers realize. So that was the natural choice for another plastic. It's a micro presentation that mimics kind of like a little creature insect larva type presentation.
So would you put that on? Which one of your jigs?
1/80th through the 1/32nd, and then the workhorse jig lineup, which I'll get to in a second.
Okay.
The mule minnows were then released, and I did a 3 sizes: 1.2 inches, 2.2 inches, and 3.2 inches. These were designed because I wanted something that didn't necessarily have the boot tail action like the Donkey Tail. I wanted a minnow presentation that was a little bit more subtle and a little bit different rate of fall. And the big species I think that were like an influence behind this were stuff like crappie and perch.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, like a minnow profile will catch just about anything that swims. And I think you'll see that, if you look at some of the photos I post on Instagram, a lot of times I get Instagram photos from actual people that buy them and use them. And you'll find that the mule minnow has caught just about anything out there, from carp and gar to, bass and bluegill and trout and everything in between. And then lastly, we got the workhorse jig lineup, and that was designed to kind of give you a different system than just the mule jigs. And really the goal was to give you a higher rate of fall, option. So they still have a number 6 hook, which is the same size as the mule jig 1/32nd. They're a little bit stronger, more dense hook, a little heavier gauge, because you're probably going to be fishing this in a little deeper water. You might be using just slightly heavier line to kind of get a good hook penetration and whatnot. But these are really designed to give you the ability to take those micro presentations outside of just the shallow water. And it also gives you the ability to cast it in windier conditions. So for me, I personally love the 1/16 ounce workhorse jig. I run that with like a donkey tail junior or a horsefly a lot of times. And I love to be able to, if it's windy out, just drop that out in front of a dock or something. I can get it down there in 12, 14 foot of water if I need to. And man, that's a great way to take those micro presentations where they haven't been before.
Deep,
Yes,
deeper.
sir.
All right, man. So much fun. Like I'm getting ready to like. Do you see the money like flying out of my wallet? Because that's what's going to happen after
Oh
this. I
gosh,
love it.
I feel like I just keep talking about myself. I always like these things. I
I
love
asked
doing
you
this, and
because
I
I
know I'm on your show as like a guest, but I always feel so silly just like talking about myself and my company.
you're not. It's something that I've never fished before. Right. I'm used to Senkos and the crankbaits and all the stuff that always shows up in my Facebook feed. And now that I said your name, your company, that's also going to show up in my Facebook feed. But this is completely new to me, and probably I know there's guys out there who really get into ultralight fishing, but since it's new to me, I'm geeking out on it. So that's why I asked you, because I'm guessing it's new to probably the majority, or even if you know a lot about it, you are. I mean, you have a company, you loved it so much, you created a company that you don't take a paycheck from because you love it so much and wanted to create a company that provided a service to a niche in a market that you believed didn't exist. And I think you did it. And so I'm just excited about it. I have no problem, paying for something that is going to elevate my level of fishing for fishing that, type of fish I typically don't do. So I am pumped about that. We are at 1 hour, 2 minutes. If you got a question for Ethan, go ahead and throw that in the comments. I didn't get to any of my questions. Let me see here. Okay, break out your crystal ball for a second. What does the future of kayak fishing in 2023 look like? Do you have like a projection, or what do you think we're going to see more of in the sector? Things to watch out for? Anything like that do you think about that you really haven't had an opportunity like to talk about? Now's that time. I want to hear about it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really like been actively looking for a kayak or anything, so I think I haven't necessarily like I haven't thought about this a lot. It's a good question, but for me, I'd say like in the near future, I don't know that there's going to be anything like crazy all of a sudden come out in 2023. However, where I think over time, I hope some of these kayak models go, and it's probably not going to be the popular answer. I would like to see more options that are still a pedal drive fishing system that do give anglers a lighter option. So
Hmm.
if you look at like the Hobie Lynx, that's a very lightweight piece of equipment that gives you the ability to still get out there and do a pedal drive system, or like a whatever you call it, the Hobie drive system. But it's much lighter and it's easier to transport. It's easier to store. I want to see more companies gravitate that way. I don't see that happening in the near term. I think that'll be a few years out, but I think that the industry is currently missing a large opportunity because they're catering heavily to tournament anglers and people that want to spend 8 hours on the water. I think the reality is there's so many other fishermen out there that just don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
They want something that's a little bit more quick and it's more suited to transportation and storage, but at the same time they still want the pedal drive. They still want like something that's conducive for fishing. So I don't know if it's something with material innovation that they do, using a lighter weight material while still having a strong solid hull. I hope that technology advances, because I'd love to see more 50 and 60-pound kayaks that still are a good fishing rig with pedal drive. And I hope that's not too far-fetched.
No, I hope not either. I mean, I have a Native Slayer Propel 10. That thing bare without the motor, I think it's like 62 pounds. And I
Oh,
can
well,
take
that's
that
not too
thing
bad.
anywhere. Well, then I upgraded to a P127, 12 foot, 7 inches. Thing weighs like $120.
Yeah. And I feel like that's where a lot of the innovation has been. It's like over time, it's like it continues to get like there's lots of 80, 90, 100, 120-pound kayaks, and that's great, but you only need so many, especially when there's so many kayak companies doing them well.
Yeah.
To me, it's like there's way less options in the 50 to 60 range, and like, I think there's an opportunity there. So I hope that we see some more because I know that I would personally like it. I mean, shoot, I've been eyeballing that Hobie Lynx. I don't want to spend that kind of money, dude, but that thing is awesome.
I'll probably end up in a Hobie someday. We'll see. I don't know.
Oh, it's hard to justify, but I know that.
It's a lot of cash. I mean, I found my bona fide on Facebook Marketplace for like a steal, like you can't pass it up type of
That is a
steal.
good piece of advice. Buy used.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I literally bought this. Here's the story. I drove 2 hours to get it in Indiana, but when I got there, I asked the question like, "Hey, how many times have you had this out?" And he's like, "Once." I took it out
Buy
once and
used.
just didn't like it for whatever reason. And I was like, I'm looking at it. It looked like he just took it from the showroom floor and put it right in front of me. I was like, this thing's beautiful. I mean,
Yep.
it didn't have any dirt on it. It was like brand new.
You know, the nice thing is you're gonna take that thing out a whole bunch of times. You're gonna fish out of it all the time. And then let's say you use it 50 times and you're like, you know what, I want to upgrade or adjust. You're gonna sell it and you're gonna lose like very little money because you got it for a steal.
Yeah.
It's like
Yep.
I love that feeling because I bought some kayaks for a really good deal and I sold them for more than I bought them for.
Yep.
And I took them out 20 times. And it's like, so I basically got paid to go fishing. It's like that's how my brain comprehended it. It's like it didn't cost me money. All these trips didn't cost me money because I got it for 800 and I sold it for 850 2 years later. It's like that was a good investment. So
That's what I keep telling my wife.
yeah, it's an investment.
It's an investment.
I mean, the good news is it's plastic. Like kayaks don't depreciate the same way a boat does, a car
Right.
does. It's plastic. Like as long as you take care of it, it should hold its value to a pretty good degree.
For sure. For sure. Well, everybody, I want to thank Ethan for being on the show. Couple things here, though. One, thank you, US River Maps, of course, to sponsor the show. Check them out if you haven't done. Get $35 off. But also, I've been talking about this a lot, which is the Knucklehead Bass Fishing Series. Um, Ethan, have you heard about this at all? We talked.
I don't think so.
So it's a series where essentially, starting in May for me, May, June, July, and August, it's 4 1-month tournaments. And these 1 month tournaments, if you win that tournament, you can win a spot on my team where we go down to Lake Gunnersville and fish against Team Hoover, Team Flukemaster, Team Rudd, Team Creek Fishing Adventures, and there's a tournament for the Hero Cup down there. And so if you haven't done that, I've got a video coming out on my YouTube channel that kind of explains it in a lot more detail than I just shared just now. But would love for you to be on Team Wendell. And if Team Creek Fishing Adventures is still on, you're probably going to beat me down there. But nonetheless, I like talking a little trash. It's going to be a giant party. And so stay tuned for that. I'm going to be talking about it a whole lot more. Check out is it mulefishing.com?
Yes, sir.
Check out mulefishing.com. If ultralight fishing is something you want to get yourself into, head over to FishAnything on YouTube. Give Ethan a sub, and I know he'll take care of you. Guys, thank you so much. We will see you next Tuesday, same time, same place. Hope you guys have a great week. See you later.